Welcome back, everyone, to our Portugal property masterclass. Lovely to have you with us today. Gone through plenty of the elements around financing, finding, buying, owning a property in Portugal. I think it's fair to say that a lot of the focus has been on holiday home ownership. We have touched on making a permanent move and relocation, but that is what we're going to focus on in this session. So people who are looking to move to Portugal permanently, and there's a lot of people out there, and there's a lot of people for a particular reason looking to do it quite promptly, I think it is fair to say. So let me introduce you to a new panelist who's not been with us yet today, Matthew Christman from Blevins Franks. Good afternoon, Matthew.
Good afternoon, Andy.
And where are you? Who are you? What do you do? Tell us a bit about Blevins.
Sure, yeah. I'm based in Cascais in Portugal, just outside Lisbon. I lived here for the last 17 years, so I've been here a long time. I'm one of the partners here who manages the Cascais office. And for those of you who don't know Blevins Franks, we've been in Portugal for over 40 years, and we provide cross-border tax, investment and pension advice for UK nationals either moving here or living here. Okay, nicely put, very succinct. And people will recognize Paula from an earlier session. Paula Morales, how are you?
Good afternoon to all. I'm well, Andy. Enjoying these webinars? Yes, it is true. I'm enjoying. It's nice. We're having fun.
Good, good. So let's continue the fun then. And we ended our previous session on a bit of a cliffhanger with a question from Bill O'Brien, who was asking about residency. How hard is it to get residency in Portugal? So let's talk about the current set of circumstances and where we are with the impending deadline triggered by Brexit. What's the current situation in trying to get residency in Portugal, please, Paula?
Andy, I'm having lots of people wanting to come and live here and guarantee their condition of becoming, maintaining their position as a UE resident. It's a very simple process. But the requirements are established by law, namely having a bank account in Portugal, at least with 3 months of existence, having a property, or at least having rented one as a long-term rental, which shows the intention to the Portuguese authorities of the intention of permanent living in this country. And for that, Andy, you need, apart from having the rental agreement or the property, you will need, for those that don't have the property, you will need to start the process by having a fiscal number, which is equivalent to your national insurance number, and opening that bank account.
Okay, so let's move into the detail of that, because we already have a question in from Susan Connolly, saying if we're unable to find a suitable long-term rental to get in before the end of the year, can we just take a holiday rental?
It's mandatory to have a long-term rental. I'm sorry to disappoint Mrs. Connolly, but it's mandatory. I had clients 2 years ago that they came. They stayed around 6 months in a local apart hotel, I would say so, and of course in the end of the time they could not get the residency because the government denied.
And is it true that you would then need to, or would it be sensible to put the utilities for that rental property into your name to prove that you have that you're living there and attached to that rental agreement?
Yes, I think it's a good idea. It's not mandatory, but it's a good idea to have so.
Okay. Sorry, so the parts that you broke that down into for us on residency, it's the proof of the address, and what else did you mention?
The bank account and the fiscal number. So I would say the fiscal number, the bank account, and the proof of address.
Okay, so Elizabeth Taggart asks, how easy is it to open a bank account in Portugal?
Very easy. It's a 24 hours process. So you walk into the bank with all the requirements. Our office, if people want, we do not charge for information. So feel free to ask. We can put you in contact with 3 or 4 banks. It's your choice. And you can liaise directly with the bank. They will tell you exactly what you need to open that bank account. You walk into the branch, you do your signatures, and next day you have an operating Portuguese bank account. Very simple.
Okay, very straightforward. Matthew, again, let's stick with this idea of what we can do before the end of the year and what we know is fact before the end of the year, before we move into post-Brexit world. I've got a question here for you from Elaine Harper, asking, as a retiree looking to move to Portugal permanently, how is it to move my, well, she said financial services, I guess assets is a similar word, from the UK company to a local one? Is that specifically stuff that you do? Elaine is referring to a pension transfer from the UK government.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a very valid question. And we get that a lot at the moment, because basically people that have UK advisors or investment houses looking after them, many of those won't be able to actually advise them or look after them in Portugal. So what they need to do is they need to find somebody on the ground who's actually licensed and regulated here in Portugal to be able to continue to give them advice. Obviously, it's something that we do at Levin Strengths, and we are licensed and regulated here. But yeah, my advice is to find somebody that is regulated here and can continue to look after you.
So thank you for your question, Elaine. And for anybody else wanting to ask questions, just tap the Q&A icon on your screen at the bottom or at the top, depending on your device, and ping your questions over to me, and I will put them to our panel. So just looking at specific pension situations, Matthew, I come to you as somebody who's worked my career in the UK. I'm looking to retire to Portugal. What's a starting point then in looking at my UK assets, and what sort of advice do you give? I understand that everybody's circumstances are going to be different, but are there some overarching principles around your assessment?
Absolutely. The main principles are, obviously people are moving to a new country. They're going to have new expenses. Those expenses will be in a different currency than the UK, it will be in euros. People need to look at that. And they need to look at the taxation situation as well in Portugal, because it's completely different than the UK. I'm sure you've covered in other webinars today or yesterday about the non-habitual residency here, which is very, very tax efficient. But really what people need to do is they need to ascertain what they're looking to achieve with their pensions in Portugal, because it will be very different in terms of lifestyle here and expenditure here. And this is something we do at Levin Strengths. We give it a look at analysis, looking at what people are trying to achieve with their pension, both during their time in Portugal and looking at their family situation in terms of their beneficiaries as well.
Okay, well, just run through the non-habitual residency scheme for us as an overview in lay terms, if you would, Matthew.
Sure, yeah, I mean, it's been around now, really since 2009. Portugal brought it in at the height of the global financial crisis, really to attract what they believe to be wealthy retirees and what they called high value added activity working people. On the retiree side, it meant that anyone moving here who hasn't lived in Portugal for the previous 5 years, when they got tax residency, they could also apply for this non-habitual residency, this NHR status, which you still can. And what that meant, so a host of tax benefits. The main one for pensioners being that up until the 1st of April this year, there was no tax in Portugal on pension drawdown for 10 years under the 10-year NHR status. That's now changed to a flat rate of 10%, but it's still very attractive. There's no taxation on overseas dividends. And for those people that are actually coming here working, if you have what's deemed to be a high value added activity, then there's a lower tax rate. It's a tax rate, a flat rate of 20%, which is a lot lower than the scale rates here. So really it's hugely attractive both for retirees, but also for those members of the public looking to come here and actually work for working here as well. It's very attractive on the income tax.
So obviously in relocating to Portugal permanently, you are becoming a fiscal resident and tax status moves to Portugal from the UK. That's principle number one, I guess. And then there has been a lot of coverage of that scheme and the change in April, but it's still highly beneficial then at 10%. Does that just apply, did you say, to pension drawdown, or does it cover other income?
No, that's pension drawdown, and remember, it is pension drawdown from overseas, not Portuguese source pension. But for those UK nationals, mostly, they will be UK pensions, of course. But that is on pensions, but on dividends, it's tax efficient, even royalties and other areas as well. So many areas, it's very attractive if you compare that to other countries in terms of their rates on taxing pensions.
So typically somebody would approach you and say they're planning to move. I mean, when do they interact with you? I guess as early as possible is probably when you want to see them. When do people sort of think about their assets and moving them across or making them most tax efficient?
Some people think about it in terms of their planning, maybe planning now while being in the UK. Some people wait to come to Portugal and then contact us. From my point of view, the better advice and the most we can do for people is when they're still in the UK, because there's planning that they can still do in the UK before leaving in terms of taking advantage of capital gains tax allowances while still a UK tax resident, possibly taking pension commencement lump sums that side. Obviously, it's depending on their particular situation, the advice we give, but to give the full service and getting the most out of what we do, it's better if people start the advice process while still being in the UK.
So I guess that's where the specialism and the space that you occupy then, because presumably you must be regulated or authorised to operate in both those jurisdictions.
We are. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, we are. I'm an FCA regulated individual. Blooding Strengths is a company. We're regulated with the Finance Conduct Authority in the UK, which means that yes, we can give this cross-border advice both in the UK and in Portugal in terms of advice before people leaving the UK, and also the ongoing service when they have arrived in Portugal and live here. With our offices in both Greater Lisbon and the Algarve.
And you mentioned capital gains tax there. It cropped up on a webinar we were doing in Spain about the benefit of dispersing or selling your primary residence in the UK free from capital gains, as any homeowner does in the UK. But you could be penalised if you sold that in a year in which you became tax resident in Spain. What's the situation in Portugal with regards to that?
Well, look, with capital gains on the sale of property, it's very specific on people's actual situation. So, I mean, I can't give advice on a particular situation, but what I can say is under non-habitual residence in Portugal, if you sell UK property, then of course it's because it's in situ in the UK, it could be liable to tax in the UK, but under the NHR scheme in Portugal, it's what's called exempt with progression in Portugal for 10 years. So there's no further taxation in Portugal for 10 years under NHR, only on the sale, on the capital gain of UK property, not on other assets, but on real estate, yes. Okay.
And Paula, jumping back to bank accounts, lots of people asking about bank accounts. 3 or 4 people asking, could they open them remotely? Do they need to be there in person?
I think majority.
That was a sigh. That was a big sigh, Paula.
Yes, because just this week I had a client asking me if they could open an internet bank account, and I'm not very familiar with that. So in Portugal, you really need to walk physically in most of the branches. You need to walk in, sign in, because now they don't use paper, they use iPad. So you really need to sign as you sign on your passport in this iPad. So you need to be here. But I would advise people also to explore that possibility of an internet bank account. I'm really not familiar with.
But I guess they're also asking, can they open a regular bank account as the process that you do, but in absentia, not actually being in the country to do that? Can they do that through power of attorney or something?
They could. Normally, I don't do that. I prefer clients to deal directly with banks, but during the lockdown period, we had clients that needed to open bank accounts on their specific processes, and I did it. But in that case, the power of attorney to be granted, it's only specifically to open the account. I cannot have any kind of access afterwards. I do not have access to movements. I cannot do any kind of movements, specifically only to open the bank account.
Okay, so while it's a personal preference from you not to do that, you prefer to have the client there, you can open a bank account on behalf of somebody through a power of attorney?
Yes, it's possible.
Yeah. And do they need to be present to sign a power of attorney then, or can that be done remotely?
That also can be done remotely. Okay.
Caroline Trigg messages just to say, I've just opened a bank account in Portugal remotely. So well done, Caroline. That shows that there is some online availability there. Plenty of people asking on residency, obviously with the clock ticking, now we've moved into September. Do we have to wait a full 3 months before we can apply for residency? If somebody was arriving tomorrow, signing a rental agreement on Friday, could they just apply straight away, Paula?
Andy, the legislation states it's 3 months, but it's based on declaration. So if the person appears at the town hall and says that they arrived 3 months ago, nobody will check.
Paula, you said that publicly on a webinar.
I said, Andy, I said, because everyone is putting me this question, and some people say to me, oh, I went to the town hall in Caldas da Rainha and nobody asked me, and I was here a week ago. And of course, I have to say, the law says this, but each town hall is different. Some will check, others won't. But it's based on the declaration of the person.
Okay, so, I mean, there is still time to do it legitimately and complying with the 3-month requirement if somebody moved there next week. But you're saying it's not very stringent, the check that they put in place to say how long you have been there before you do apply for residency.
I will give you an example. For example, if you go to the town hall of Albufeira, the legislation states that you need to show 3 months bank statements. They don't even ask to see the 3 months bank statement. So once it's based on the declaration of the person, you say what you have to say, Andy.
And Caroline, who managed to open the online account, is asking about, so the period that you declare that you have been in the country to enable you to count to apply for residency, does that period then count in terms of the amount of time you're allowed to spend in any period, in any 6 months?
Andy, up to now, that wasn't taken in consideration. From next year, I don't know if it will, but up to now, because we have the freedom of movement, it hasn't been checked. As far as I know, in Portugal, hasn't been checked.
Okay, so let's cover where we are in terms of Brexit and the deadline at the end of the year. So we know what you can do now. We know that you can get a rental agreement if you're not looking not in a position to buy before the end of the year. What do we know about next year, Paula, in terms of applying for residency, and what happens? I mean, presumably there are processes in place for non-EU citizens to become resident in Portugal. Is that what we're likely to default to as UK citizens?
Andy, that's my point. Is there where I look into, because up to date there's nothing yet regulated. So I always do that. I compare worst case scenario. UE citizens could be considered third countries to Europe, and in those circumstances, the worst case scenario, you would be treated the same way. And yes, there are several possibilities for people to still apply for residency. And one of those is by buying a property of a certain amount of money and acquiring residency via that property. Forming a company in Portugal, it's also a possibility. So transferring a certain amount of funds to a Portuguese bank account. So there are still several possibilities of options for people that do not register until the 31st of December, they can do as a third person to Europe does in this moment.
And in this rush to get residency, people are asking what does it actually mean? What do you get in terms of access to state healthcare, for example, Paula?
Yes, that's one of the most interesting and important things I think that you get is the possibility to use our Portuguese healthcare system, which I allowed myself to say that is very good. The national healthcare system is very good. And the possibility to circulate in the Schengen space without needing of any visa. So these are the big advantages of being a Portuguese resident before the 31st of December.
And lots of questions, Matthew, coming in about pensions and becoming tax resident and exactly at which point you become tax resident. Do the different jurisdictions, the UK and Portugal, do they have different tax years? Is there an overlap period?
They do have different tax years. So the UK, as everyone knows, or most people know, is the 6th of April to the following year, the 5th of April. Portugal is the calendar year. So Portugal, the tax year starts on the 1st of January and ends on the 31st of December. Okay. Now, in the year of leaving the UK and coming to Portugal, if the tax year starts on a different date, then the year you leave, the UK and the Portugal operates something called a split year tax agreement, where up until the date you leave the UK, you're taxed in the UK. And then after that, when you're in Portugal, going forward in that split year tax year, you're taxed in Portugal. So there is a double taxation agreement with the countries as well. And under the common reporting standards, the countries do talk to each other tax-wise. So it's fairly well managed.
You're not going to be paying twice, you're just going to be paying the appropriate jurisdiction.
Correct. And with any double taxation agreement between OECD countries, you will not pay tax on the same income and gain twice in both countries. You might pay a difference, but you won't pay the same amount.
Okay. And Eric Panoff asks, how long does it take to become Portuguese tax resident? I mean, what is that? What is it actually based on, being tax resident in Portugal?
Being based on tax resident in Portugal, if you've moved to Portugal and your plan here is to stay, then you are deemed tax residents. If you move here, put your children in school and are living here and have a rental agreement or purchase, then you are deemed tax resident. Simple as that. Yeah.
So it's not a case of an application as such, it's just determined by you being there and spending time there. So I think that's an important point, Paula, isn't it, also for residency, apart from the requirement for an address and the other points you took us through, you need to physically be there, I guess.
Yes, you need to. You need to go to the local town hall and register. You bring with you your documents, the bank account, last 3 months statement, your passport, your fiscal number, your proof of address, and you fill in some forms. Normally our office goes with the clients. We are there, we fill in everything for you because it's in Portuguese. You sign and next day you can pick up your residence. It's a 24 hours, 48 hours process. It's very simple, very straightforward.
Okay, and Matthew, somebody anonymous asking, I'm trying to convince my mum to move to Portugal with me. She's worried about her pension she'll be getting in a couple of years. Is there anything she should do to transfer the pension to Portugal? You're not physically transferring the pension as such, are you? It's just really a pension scheme in one place paying out into another?
Well, it depends on the mother's situation. It depends on what type of pension she has. There's many, many different types of pension. With some pensions, you have the ability, if you leave the UK, to move to what's called a qualifying recognised overseas pension scheme, that are known as QROPs. It's quite a mouthful, that, so known as QROPs, so it's a abbreviation. And they are pension schemes that are licensed or recognised by HMRC as overseas pension schemes that are in line with UK legislation, and you're allowed to move your UK pensions to those overseas schemes. And those overseas schemes, can, in some circumstances, depending on people's situation, be more beneficial to the individual living in Portugal, for example, including currency diversification, for example, having in euros, and also possible benefits upon their demise, tax benefits. So yeah, it can in some cases, Andy, be beneficial for people to actually consolidate those pensions into something of an overseas scheme for them.
Okay. Well, Ian McLeod asks about the tax position on receipt of a UK public sector final salary pension if moving to Portugal.
Once again, Portugal, with all these pensions, is taxing it at a flat rate of 10%. So whether the UK tax at the source on some civil service schemes, that is the case, but in Portugal, it's a flat rate of 10%.
Okay. And is there any scope, asks Debbie Snee, for investing in a kind of Portuguese annuity? She says, I presume that means buying into a Portuguese pension. What do you think she would, what's she suggesting there?
Where the pension buys a guaranteed income. There are possibilities around that, yes, depending on the situation, but annuities are available, yes.
Okay. And a question from Caroline Trigg for you, Paula. If I get residency before December, would my spouse be able to get residency and healthcare later, i.e. after December 2020?
Yes, I think that is a straightforward one answer, because I have, for example, British clients married to other nationalities. So we do the residency at the town hall with the client, the 24 hours process, and then we apply with foreign services, foreign affairs services. They will give us an appointment, and this person will be allowed to stay, is allowed to stay in Portugal via the husband or the wife. So yes, then they are entitled to the same rights that the spouse. So yes, it is.
Okay. And one for you, Matthew. Jan Kumar asks about capital gains tax. If you sold a UK property when you had become tax resident in Portugal, would you only pay on the increase in value since you were tax resident in Portugal?
No, but as a non-resident, they changed the law a few years ago now. As a non-resident, you'd only pay an uplift in value from April 2015, because that's when George Osborne changed the law. Up until April 2015, for a non-resident, there was no capital gains on the sale of UK property. They changed the law then, so it's the uplift in value after that. But there are other rules around that that could reduce their capital gain even further, depending on their situation. This is something on tax advice that we can provide at Blevins Ranks, of course, if they wanted to contact us directly, and we could look into their situation.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say a lot of these questions are just the top of very specific set of financial and personal circumstances, and they're better interacting directly. One from John Franklin, which is a little bit more general. If you have NHR status, so non-habitual residency scheme, how much time must you spend in Portugal each year? Is there a minimum?
Well, the Paolo know this very well as well, is that Portugal, to be tax resident here, you should spend over 183 days in any calendar year, which is the tax year. That's obviously 6 months and a day, but the other stipulation is that your principal private residence should be here in Portugal on the 31st of December. So yeah, the 183-day rule is the most common one.
Okay, and just touch on that, widening things out, Paula, for holiday homeowners. How much time are they able to spend in Portugal, do you think, from next year onwards?
I believe 6 months, Andy, which is what are allowed the third countries.
Okay.
90 plus 90.
Okay, and Rachel Smith asks about opening a business in Portugal. When can I open a business after getting residency? There wouldn't be any restriction on that, I guess, Paula?
No, you can open on the next day if you wish. You can open on your personal name, or you can open a company, which the process is also very straightforward. You can form a company in the same day. One as expression you use in the UK, one of the shelf companies, so you can get it in one day, or you can create your own company in a week or so.
Okay. Lots of questions from Debbie Snee. I think, Debbie, you should get in touch with Paula. But let's see if we can answer this one for her. I think she's watching from Australia. So thank you for joining us, Debbie. We've owned a holiday apartment for 12 years in Portugal. We have a fiscal number, we have a bank account. We currently live in Australia. We're moving to Portugal as soon as international flights resume. Probably not able to get there before December. Is it possible to use power of attorney to get residency before December?
No, for that, they will really need to be in person at the town hall. But if they arrive until December, everything is feasible. Okay.
And if you're not buying between now and the end of the year, going back to this idea of renting to prove your residency, to prove that you're living there and applying for residency, would you recommend putting each of the names of the people who are renting on the rental agreement? Would that show, display to the authorities that you're definitely there, or is that not really an issue, Paula?
I would recommend to have both names on the rental agreement.
Okay. And Matthew, one for you from Sandra Hamrouni. Can you confirm whether a defined benefit pension from the UK Civil Service would be taxed in the UK and not in Portugal because of the double taxation agreement?
I can't confirm that, but the general rule of thumb is that civil service schemes are taxed at source in the UK, yeah. But I can't confirm that without, of course, looking at it. But that's
yeah. Okay. Well, let me show how people can contact you. If you check in the chat function on this screen, then you will see the links to both Matthew and to Paula. Let me also show you where they are over here. So this is our event website where you've registered for today's series of webinars. Over here we have Meet Our Exhibitors, and here we have our Portugal page. So on our Portugal page, we have all the people who've taken part in today's presentations, including Paula and Matthew from Blevins Franks. If you wanted to book a meeting with them to discuss your circumstances in detail, click on their page, have a look at the services that they offer. And should you like to book a Zoom call, then just click on that, put in your name, tick that to give permission for them to contact you and book. And that email will go off to Paula and you could have a Zoom call with her. There's also a contact form here. If you don't fancy a Zoom call, you could just go on this page and message Paula. And similarly, you could go on the Blevins Franks page and message Matthew with your particular questions. So there are a lot of questions coming in. Paula, a question from Eric Panoff asking, how was the bacalhau?
Delicious.
You've had it already.
Olive oils and very nice red wine. Delicious, delicious.
Right. Well, your day is going well. It's just got better.
Yes, and when we joined all together, I will show you the picture of my meal.
Okay. A question here from Darren Clark. Which banks do you point people in the direction of? I guess ultimately it's the individual's decision as to which bank they want to use, but is there a more, how can I put it, overseas resident friendly bank to work with, Paula?
I always say to the clients, banks for me are all the same. The only difference is the people that are there. So banks, like lots of people want to open with Santander. I don't have nothing against, but Santander is good for those people that don't want eye contact, those people that want to do through internet, everything through internet. So those are ideal. But if you want to come to walk in, to put your queries, to speak with them, I would recommend banks as BPI, Bank Inter, Millennium. Clients normally give a very feedback of these banks.
Okay. And is banking free in Portugal? We're used to UK banking being well, free, not in the charges if you go overdrawn, but ostensibly free banking service. What's the situation in Portugal?
Matthew, what do you say about this?
From personal experience, banks do charge here. They charge a monthly fee for an account. Certain insurance as well, but they're not free, no. Not free,
okay. And what, going back to the residency application, so many questions on residency, Paula, proof of income. What sort of levels of income are people going to have to display, both in regular monthly or in a lump sum?
Andy, it's requested now to do the residency is to show a medium average deposit of 1,500 euros, 1,500. So if you open the bank account and you transfer that amount to the bank account and you do no movements, they will always show the same. So not more than this. It's 1,500 will be enough.
So well, that's just a single transfer payment. You don't need to prove regular income to apply for residency?
Not at the moment, Andy, not for now.
Okay. Matthew, somebody definitely should speak to you directly here. They're asking you about your fees for your advice. Are you, as a principal, are you fee-based, or is it, what sort of structures involved? What can they talk to you for nothing for now?
Yes. So first of all, if people just want to set up either a Zoom call with me or send me an email, for a general chat and anything generic, no, of course I don't charge a fee. But we, of course, as a business, if people want to engage our services, then we do charge fees. Yes, as well, in the same way, because being a UK firm, in the same way as a UK IFA, we charge fees. Yes.
Okay, and Paula, on residency applications next year. Andrew Tong is asking about, is it going to be an easier application process for owning a property? And if you spend a certain amount, will it be easier still?
Andy, I want to believe so, but as I said before, is nothing yet legislated on that sense. So I think, yes, if you do the investment as to some third countries I referred, yes, there is a possibility to get a visa, a residency authorization to live in Portugal by investment. But in this moment, also I have to alert people because they might, I might not been cleared on my answer and might create confusion. To get these visas, the visa must be required in the year of the investment. Some people already have the investment and come to me and say, Paula, you remember we did this purchase of this property with us, can we get a golden visa? I say, you don't need a golden visa. You can apply for simply residency. You don't need to spend any extra money in the future to get the residency. Let's organize it now. So if people are thinking to do the investment, next year, they have to apply for that residency permit in the year of the purchase.
Okay, and just expand a little bit then on the idea of the golden visa. When did that come about, and what is the current status of that program?
Andy, this is basically from the same time that Matthew referred when we were going through the deep crisis in Portugal. So our government opened this possibility to attract foreign investment. As I said, there are several ways of obtaining the visa through the investment in Portugal. You can invest on a property, you can invest in doing a company, creating jobs, investing in science and arts. So there are several ways to get this visa. Once you have defined what is your goal, what you're gonna do, if you're gonna invest through the purchase of the property. Once you have completed that process, then we can apply for the visa or for the client and their family, and they can bring family along also. So it's not a difficult process, but can take several months before you get the residency authorization.
Okay, and do either of you know about the D7 passive income visa? Is that anything you're familiar with, Matthew? Or no, shaking of the head on that one, Paula? No, that's quite a specific one that we're not aware of. So there we go. I think we've covered off most of the questions. That's been Paula, your hand up. You can't go yet. Are you asking to be excused? You can't go. Don't go.
Sorry, Andy. I want to say to this person that put that question that they can contact me and I can investigate and I can give them an answer, as we did with other questions that I didn't know, like the parrot, remember?
I do remember the parrot. We should explain for people who weren't on the webinar in July that we had a question about somebody moving to Portugal with a particular type of parrot. It was a very particular type of parrot, which I think was 100 years old. Is that right?
They can go up to that age, yes.
Yes.
I don't remember in this case how old was the parrot, but yes, they can go up to 100 years old.
And I think the parrot had to prove residency and 3 months income or 1,500 euros in a bank account.
He had to prove all that and more. It was not only that, but I found that and I clarified clients on that. Thank you.
You're very kind with your time. That's great, Paula. So thank you everybody for joining this session. That's been really interesting. Some fairly dense stuff there for a Sunday afternoon when the sun's shining, I have to say. So we do appreciate you joining. There's obviously a lot of interest. This deadline is triggering a lot of people to act now. So do feel welcome to join us for our final session, which will be in 20 minutes at 3 o'clock. We've got no formal subject for that. We're just going to bring all our exhibitors from today's Portugal Property Masterclass on screen for a final chat, cover a couple of subjects, take some final questions, and then see where we are at the end of that session. So thank you for your time. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you. Thank you all.
And we'll see you all shortly in 20 minutes. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.